Banners, they are everywhere in the Warhammer universes. Age of Sigmar, Warhammer 40k, The Lord of the Rings, and even that one we were supposed to forget about, the Old World. Banners were so important in Warhammer that they even had their own Golden Demon category from 1987 up to 1990. They were then replaced by the Command Group category and still included some banners, but the focus was on the whole of the squad. Games Workshop know how much we love banners, and they even sell the Ultramarine Standard as a fridge magnet for £16.
And who could blame them? That thing is beautiful. Hello, I am Woody. Welcome to Woody Minis. Today we are saving the Ultramarines Chapter Banner.
Now this is my favourite banner of all time. I had this guy when I was maybe 10 years old, when he first came out in the metal set with Marneus Calgar and his Honour Guards. This one has been through the wars, and I managed to purchase him as part of the full set on eBay. I had to buy a new set as I lost them during a house move. I've already helped fix Marneus Calgar over here, but now it's time to work on the Bannerman. Let's take a look at the damages first, and immediately this little burr caught my eye. It's from the old metal sprues, and it should have really been clipped off, but it wasn't. I'm also liking how they've tried to add some shading here, and they've tried to add something to the wings, I think, maybe some highlights. And they've painted all the little details on it, including the little gun and the Tyranids of fleshy colour. That's not looking too bad. But there is a lot of paint chipping, and there is a lot of really thick paint all over it. So I think we're going to have our work cut out for us for this one. These old metal sculpts are gorgeous and hold up so much. I mean, all of these details have been hand sculpted about 21 years ago for the release in 2005, along with the Space Marine 4th edition codex. They did have their problems, like with this arm constantly falling off, but that's what you get with metal minis. I was too young to know how to pin. All I did was let it fall off and then superglue it back on, which I'm pretty sure this person has done as well. They've even been kind enough to leave their fingerprints all over the banner in some black, streaky, mucky stuff, which we're going to get rid of in the bath shortly. And as I was touching this backpack, I felt it move, so I'm thinking that it's not actually glued into place properly. Maybe I can just take it off, and that will help me when I take away all the paint and super glue. Right, let's have a go. That was a lot easier than I thought it would be. Wow, okay, hopefully that'll let the isopropyl alcohol get into all the little gaps there. But there's a little bit of damage that I'll need to clean up. Right, okay, dunking in the bath time. I prepared my glass jar and began to fill it with isopropyl alcohol. This was my first time using isopropyl alcohol, so I looked up some guide online and it said to just leave it overnight. And something had clearly happened the next day because my alcohol had changed colour. When working with the isopropyl alcohol, I do prefer to wear nitrile gloves when handling it because you never know what's in there and how it's going to affect your skin. I gave our company champion his first scrub, and it wasn't really working that well, so I placed him back inside. The next day, the jar had become more saturated, and I took this as a good sign. However, it wasn't quite to be, because I couldn't even get any of this paint off with a toothpick. It was really, really difficult, and I only managed to take off little chips, so I purchased an ultrasonic cleaner. I took a few minutes to read through the guide and learnt that you shouldn't really put isopropyl alcohol in it because of the low flash point. It can, detonate at about 12 degrees, so this is actually just water with a bit of soap in it. The soap helps the sound waves travel through the water, create little cavities that will clean off the mini. He stayed in there for about 10 minutes and had the occasional scrub while doing so. I ended up repeating this process about 3 times and was left with something that I was quite happy with. Not all the paint had gone, some of it was stained, but it was looking good enough for me to start clipping off all of those burrs from earlier in the video and cleaning up the model. I tested the connection for his sword arm because I wanted it to be secure so that it doesn't fall off. For this, I was going to be using pinning. I matched up my drill bit and my wire and then used my craft knife to just twist it and score a small hole to prevent slippage of the drill bit when pinning. The soft pewter is pretty easy, and if you've got a little tough drill bit, you should have no problems with this. It took me about 2 minutes. I repeated the process for his sword arm too, making sure to match up the connection points. I stuck in my brass rod, snipped it short to about 2mm to increase the surface area that could be glued on. After that, it was a simple matter of putting on the sword arm with a tiny dab of glue. I held it in place while the super glue hardened, and it was pretty solid, so I did the backpack next. He was ready for priming, but before I primed him, I stuck him back onto his old base so that he wouldn't fall over. A short while later, and he was done and dry in a nice black primer. I want to actually play with this guy one day, so I need to update him to the new base sizes. And the closest model I could find sits on a 40mm base. To increase the overall height of my miniature, I added lots of cork chips to my base by peeling them off from an old wine cork and just super gluing them on. This will give it a slightly rocky appearance and help him fit in with the rest of my soon-to-be Ultramarines army. Whilst gluing the cork down, I made sure to leave a small cavity for his base slot to slide into. But I wasn't done quite yet because it did need a lot of texture, and for this I'd be using AK Light Earth diorama. It was a painting handle of a previous video, and it's also getting a bit past it. It's actually quite tough inside. I didn't want to waste any of it, so I want to use it as much as possible. And it is really sticky. It's like a loose paste kind of hard cheese texture. I scooped some out with a metal sculpting tool and proceeded to add it all over the cork, making sure I could see some poking through to give the appearance of rocks under mud. When I was finished, it looked like this. I still needed to find that slot from earlier, so I took my miniature and pressed him in to create that groove. It was pretty easy, and I didn't mind getting some of the texture paste on his feet because it will help him blend into his environment later. And the next day, a quick test of how hard it's dried, how it's cured, and it is ready for the miniature to be attached with a little drop of super glue.
To be honest, I was dreading this paint job because this banner is so difficult. It's got so many folds, it's got so many details, everything's kind of pressed together, and it's an old sculpt too. But that's the thing I loved about it most, so I gave it my best shot.
I attached him to my makeshift painting handle with a copious amount of blue tack and built up the nerves to begin just doing the base first. I just used some Agrax Earthshade all over this texture paste and chalk, and it normally gives it a really nice appearance. For the armour, I base coated it with a mix of Macragge blue that had been darkened with a tiny bit of Abaddon black. I would be building up all of these colours, getting brighter and brighter up to the point to give it a semi-non-metallic metal look. I made sure to apply the lighter blues on areas that were facing upwards towards the light source, which would be above him. Especially these bits on the toes that are sticking out, a little bit on the legs that are more exposed to the world, and of course on his arms, shoulders and fists. I kept getting progressively lighter with the highlights, and I was liking where it was going. These little reflections gave me the old school heavy metal style look that I'd always never been able to do as a kid. To draw attention to the face on such a busy model, I actually used an even lighter mix to edge highlight and add some volumetric highlights to the helmets. After that, it was time to use about 5 thin coats to paint the white details. Instead of gold for his faceplate, I also chose white, as there'd be other gold details that would also be close by, these little eagles on his shoulder. Making sure the faceplate was white would keep the attention there instead. I wanted the armour to be the brightest part, so I painted the inside of his cloak with a dark brown-red mix. I've been notorious for painting eye lenses off camera, so this time I was sure to get it done. By gently stippling, I was able to get the paint where I wanted. The leather details were a bit trickier, as they'd already painted the white, so I really couldn't afford to mess up. By now the first layer of the eyes had dried, so I was able to add some orange to the front area of his eye lens, to add some reflection, some glow, and some nice things to it. And another of my mistakes is lack of patience. This is, again, one of my flaws. That sword arm really made me struggle to paint this other eye lens, but we got there eventually, and on camera too for once. With the main body of the Marine done, I saved the banner for last. Now, this is the part that's been giving me all that anxiety because, like, there's so many folds, there's so many little details on the folds, there's so many parts hidden behind other parts, there's so many curves and thick edges and... let's get started anyway. As the banner is the main focus of this mini, I mixed together a bit of Sotek green with my Macragge blue to base coat it. This would give it a little bit brightness, a little bit more saturation for me to draw attention to. There were lots of edge highlights that I needed to do with white, lots of trim on this banner, and it did take a few thin coats and, yeah, a fair while. And this part was pure suffering. A whole line of linked ultramarine symbols all across the folds, stacked together, and I took my time to do this one as I really didn't want to mess it up. To ease my nerves before the next steps, I started painting some of the flatter areas, these Ultramarines Angels wings, and it was a joy to do. The texture was great, and oh my goodness, there's no danger of me messing up that badly. Thank goodness. Next up is what I assume is a copy of the Codex Astartes on the banner. I mean, I thought the banner was important, I thought the Codex was important, but you put them together? Well, why not? For the eagle's wings on the top, or the banner decorations, whatever you want to call it, I mixed together a couple of golds and gave it a quick paint. And one of the reasons that these banners are so important to the Space Marine chapters is they can contain lists of deeds, lists of great heroes and the companies and all of their achievements. As cool as these things are, they are a pain to paint. Around the central image of this Space Marine waving a standard is a border, and I wanted to make sure it's a nice, bright, eye-catching colour to draw people's attention to it, so of course I chose yellow. A notoriously difficult colour, and this took me more coats than the white, to be honest. It took about 4 coats to get this thing right, but I think it will be worth it in the end. And of course, with a scroll the size of this one on the banner, I was forced to do some freehanding. And I'm sorry for the out of focus, but I'm just going to share the tip that I found the most useful, which is start with the central letter first. I wanted to just put Ultra on there, so I started with the T, then I went forward with the R, back with the L and the U. This makes sure your letters are spaced evenly and in the right places. Take a gander. Not my best work, but I'm happy enough with it. Down in the lower left folds of the banner, there are lots of small panels for details and little patterns. I tried my best to freehand an ultramarine symbol, some stripes and a little eye for the first company, but yeah, I was reasonably happy with it. And on the bottom right of the banner, there's actually a star map of the Ultramar system. I thought this was a really cool, nice narrative storytelling detail. I painted it all yellow, it's got a few different stars, and it's got little star lanes in between them. Again, it took a few coats, and I ended up highlighting it with a tiny dab of white as well. After all these vigorous details, and before I go on to the hardest bit, I took a little break to just add some light turquoise to the folds of the top banner as a highlight. Because next was the tricky bit, the Space Marine on the banner. I chose a really bright turquoise blue for this, and gently stippled and stippled and stippled until I'd finished all the armor pieces. I started with the larger panels of the legs first and made sure not to get any paint into the recesses. I took my time with this as it is a really important detail for me to get right, because if I mess this up, which I kind of slightly did because I accidentally painted his gun the same color as his armor, yeah, like right here. Thankfully, it was easily fixable later on. Whilst waiting for the blue paint and the turquoise to dry on his armor, I painted the banner on the banner a different color than the banner, just to help it stand out. It was then back to highlighting the armor. This time I used almost pure white with a tiny drop of turquoise in it, just on the top edges and all the little panels that would catch the simulated light on his banner. I made sure to do this really carefully with my smallest 00 size brush. With what I thought was the hardest part of the miniature complete, I went around and finished any unfinished details like the highlights, the text on the scrolls and the washers, and I even accidentally painted a Tyranid. But, you know, it's now time for a grand reveal. This rescue was a ton of fun and was a great challenge. It's great to see how far I've come as a mini painter, and if you'd like to see how much further I can go, consider liking and subscribing, as I'll be saving the rest of the squad in the coming months.